Good morning, CDS. Thank you so much for having me. It's time to wake up. I see a lot of sleepy faces. You guys are doing such a great job. You've gotten through this, and we are here to inspire, and I'm glad that you were able to do that with the other speakers prior to me. 3 years ago, I was here on your campus. If you were part of this picture, maybe you might see your face. You probably can't because it's all your backs, but no big deal. I was here collecting shoes for a shoe drive that I was participating in on a national level, and it was with a nonprofit called Dondo Amor. The reason I was collecting these shoes was because a few months after this collection, I was going to be going to Burkina Faso, West Africa, to deliver shoes to children in orphanages and other places that otherwise didn't have access to proper footwear. To the normal person, a shoe is just a shoe. You have probably plenty of them in your closets, correct? Can I get an amen? Anybody? Raise of hands. How many of you have extra shoes? Everyone should have extra shoes, right? You probably have a whole slew of them. With that said, there are kids in other places, and the places that we specifically cater to are Ecuador, Haiti, and West Africa, where they don't have any shoes. They can't get to school because they don't have shoes. They can't get running water because they don't have shoes. They can't do all of the normal things that we would do that we take for granted because they don't have shoes. It also causes sickness. So with that said, we got this huge shoe drive together, and I had lots of churches and mosques and synagogues and schools and cultural centers and Girl Scout troops all participating in this shoe drive, and it was an amazing success. So a few months later, I went to, next slide, there we go, thank you. I went to Burkina Faso to personally deliver these shoes. What I realized at the time was that I lived in two drastically different worlds. And those two worlds were the wedding world. I was a wedding photographer. I photographed these luxurious, huge weddings with lots of money put into them. And then I also am a part of the giving back and humanitarian world. And those were the two core elements that make up who I am. I'm passionate about both of those things. And the whole entire time, what I found was that I was living these worlds separately when I didn't have to. I could have put them together. That kind of would be breaking the rules, but that's what I did. So I said, I don't care about the rules. Let's start something that could impact other people. So I started a website called Black Sheep Bride. And that is called Black Sheep Bride because we're standing out by making a difference through the wedding world. I connect brides across the globe and the nation with vendors that are charitable. I connect them with social enterprise products that give back and resources and charities that could help their wedding day be more impactful to people on their local level as well as internationally. In order for me to do that, to connect those two worlds together, I had to first identify a few things. The basic fundamental thing that I needed to recognize was, who am I? What's my identity? I was 28 when I started this. I was going to say 30. I'm aging myself right now, so don't judge me, guys. But I was 28 when I started this, and I was a mother of two. I was raised in a fairly non-wealthy environment. However, I always had photography as my passion and giving back at the core of who I was. In doing that and recognizing who I was, I realized there was an opportunity here for me to do more. And you each individually have your own personal identities. Some of you might play sports. How many in here play sports? Raise of hands. Oh my goodness, look at these hands. Cameras, I wish you could see them. That's a lot of hands. That's awesome. How many of you are in extracurricular activities? Maybe Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, reading club, history. I heard debate back in the backstage. Awesome. That's great. Very good. Those things matter because the next part of being able to recognize your impact is recognizing your influence. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the idea of tribes and communities and social influence, but we all live in these very specific groups. Some are big, some are small. Some are your family influence, some are your friends. Some are those extracurricular activities you talked about. Maybe some of you have a job. I had a job by the time I was 14, not because I was forced to, because I wanted money. And I loved it. I loved working, and I had a community of coworkers that helped make me thrive from a very young age on. Some of you might have religious communities or cultural centers that you participate in. In any case, each individual person has their own set of communities that are all different. You might have friends that are friends with each other, but at the end of the day, all of the connections that you have are not the same as the person next to you. And those connections matter because you are able to use those connections to be able to help others. I read an article yesterday on the way to rehearsal here that said the average teenager has roughly 425 Facebook friends. Can anybody account for 425 Facebook friends in here? Oh, I see one hand. You're popular. Good job, guy. 425 Facebook friends, that's a pretty significant amount. And with the onset of other social media aspects like Instagram and Snapchat and Pinterest and all of those other things, your social media reach is probably even greater than you probably give yourself credit for. And with that, you have an awesome chance to be able to impact others if you connect the dots between your identity and your circles of influence. So now that you know who you are, take a moment. Think about it. Write it down if you have a piece of paper. What are 5 of the most important pieces of your identity? What are those components to you? For me personally, I have 5 fuzz. Not F's, but fuzz, because they don't all start with F, but they sound like it. Family, faith, friends, philanthropy, and photography. You get that? 5 fuzz? You like that, everybody? Thank you. I need your personal and inner engagement. That was way too much. Thank you. So those are super important to me, so much so that it has created the core of who I am. I enjoy my family. I enjoy, more than anything, engaging with people, making friends. I call that my special gift. My special gift is making friends. I like to make friends. I also really love giving back, photography, and my faith is a core component of who I am as a person. Now that I know who I am, who do I know? And all of those components, I have special, different circles of influence. Based off of those influences, now I can consider, who can I impact now that I know these things? A perfect, unexpected example of this is back whenever CDS participated in the shoe drive I was talking about at the beginning. There was another school that was participating in the shoe drive as well. Down the street, a little bit further down, by Ybor City, there's a school called Booker T. Washington. It is one of the poorest schools in Tampa. Those students, it's elementary, they start at the beginning of the day, and most of them stay until 6 o'clock at night. They're fed 3 meals, free, because they don't have the food at home. And at the time when I was doing the shoe drive, I thought to myself, what if I asked them? I was mentoring a little girl there at the time, and I reached out to the vice principal in passing at a hallway, and I said, hey, Miss Vice Principal, I'm doing the shoe drive, and I was wondering if you thought that maybe that BTW would be interested in participating. She looked at me kindly, and she said, oh, I so appreciate the offer. I think it's great, but to be honest, we just received 100 shoes for some kids that needed them in our school alone, so it doesn't feel right for them to have to give back in that way. And I said, with all kindness in my heart, I politely disagree. I feel like this is a perfect opportunity for these children to be able to help others because they just received a gift. Now they have these shoes that they can't wear anymore that could potentially be recycled, upcycled, reused in some capacity. So the principal got word and she said, yes, let's do it. Absolutely, I completely agree. A few weeks happen, they do this huge shoe drive. That was the number 1 school out of all the schools that participated that contributed the most shoes. All of those kids created this beautiful shoe drive because it was the one thing that they had. They didn't have food at home, they didn't have money to give, but everyone, in the most cases, if you're in America, there is a certain level of things that you already have. Everyone had shoes to give. They provided over 900 pairs of shoes. And it was the most humbling experience to date, and it transformed the way that I saw things. So going back to finding my personal impact, like I said, I lived in 2 different worlds, technically 3 to be clear. I liked giving back with my photography. I loved photographing and participating in weddings. And I loved speaking and encouraging others to use their giftings, talents, abilities, privileges, opportunities to be able to help others. Because of that, I was able to now do so much more with bridging those gaps than I could before. When I was a wedding photographer, I could only photograph on my own 30 couples a year, which was a little bit too many for me personally. But now that I am doing this Black Sheep Bride website, I am contacting and engaging with over 10,000 followers on Instagram, talking to people all the time, speaking with vendors across the nation about how they can give back in a different way than I could prior, simply by breaking a few rules and connecting the dots. And I'm freckly, so connecting the dots is my go-to move. So what does that mean for you? What does it take for you? You don't have to be a 30-year-old mom of two like I am with a goofy, I don't know, anything. You can be a kid. All of these examples right now are kids under the age of 18. Some of you might be familiar with, some of them you might not be familiar with. But at the end of the day, these kids saw their identity, they recognized their influence, and they utilized those two things to make big difference in the world. And they did not stop. Malala is the perfect example. She lived in Pakistan with a father who had a passion for education that transferred over into her heart. And she started speaking up and believing that education was due to everybody that wanted it. She got impacted by this standing up because she got injured by the Taliban, and then that just brought her back full force. And now she is a public speaker. You don't have to be a public speaker. You don't have to be able to go around the world and shake hands with presidents, prime ministers. That would be fun, right? You could do that. It could be something as small as just creating a book drive for your local library. If you're into reading or going and volunteering at a nursing home, just finding that gap and putting a little love in the middle of it and filling it up could make a big difference. And the good thing about this, and you guys as a school, is you're already doing that. The shoes that you donated to the shoe drive impacted lives directly, and I got to see that firsthand. You guys donated over 700 pairs of shoes at your shoe drive, which is amazing. Thank you so much. And we were able to go deliver those shoes to countless orphanages that didn't have them otherwise. A year later, I went back, and I got to see those very shoes I donated tucked ever so politely away under the beds of these beautiful children's rooms. They were the cleanest shoes I had ever seen in my life. It was the awesomest thing, because what you don't realize is that the kids, when they're given a pair of shoes, they cherish those shoes, and they save those shoes for very, 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 very important moments. So school, maybe it's church or some sort of religious function. Maybe it's a funeral, or maybe it's baptism, things along those lines. And they keep such good care of those shoes because they know how important those shoes are to them and how much it was to be able to get those shoes to them because of awesome students like you that volunteered and donated your leftovers to help other people. And for that, I say thank you so much. You guys are the best, and I am awesomely done.